So I've become increasingly skeptical of the peer review system, and it's not necessarily because that the intention behind it is not a good intention, in that it's not, very idealistic. And in the scientific peer review system, it's the underlying system in which ideas in science are generated, where you come up with an idea and then you send it off to an editor. So you write up, some work and you send it off to an editor, and the editor divvies it off to two anonymous scientific reviewers. They give you feedback on this, and it's all anonymous. And then after that, then you respond, make adjustments to your idea, and then you send it back. I have become skeptical with it because there's an underlying layer above it that makes it challenging. And this underlying layer is that lots of people sort of play a different game in terms of how they view it. Now, if it was all of the journals had uniform quality and everybody had uniform quality, and we knew what this quality was, and it was really easily observable, um, it would be very easy to play that game, right? And to be well aware of what's actually going on, because you have this sort of easily observable process. And the problem is that it's not easily observable of what is credible, what is more trustworthy. And in fact, there's often a lot of mistakes. Even if you were to look at, say, the sort of top, there's often a lot of mistakes, right, of the top journals that people use. But at the same time, there's so much ambiguity and a lot of social processes that are behind it that are very difficult to disentangle from, real from how science is actually done, that it makes it a giant mess. Um, in that we can't identify often, what is really good idea and what is not. What's called the interrelator reliability. So this is usually it's sent off, your idea is sent off to multiple reviewers. If you start looking at the interrelator reliability, how closely that they align in terms of a judgment, it's often very low, right? So the reviewers themselves don't agree on what's good science and what's not. Um, and sometimes that is, I've heard recently, has sort of changed my perspective a little bit, is that that's a feature. And that means that there is some novelty that's associated with this, but that also makes it very difficult if you're not a good writer. If your idea is kind of on the fence, it's often going to get rejected. Or if you don't have the benefit of the doubt by by the editorial process, it's likely going to get rejected, and it's extraordinarily costly when that happens. The whole process is very, very expensive. Much more money than a lot more money than people realize, because there's a lot of time and effort and resources that are dedicated to these scientific ideas. Now, on the other side of this is that there's lots of, and this is why people sort of play a game always, is that there's people's lives that are at stake, and real lives, right? Like there's people that are either made or broken through this process, right? So they either make a lot of money, or they don't make a lot of money. And there's been scandals in the last few years. There's always some scandal in science about this kind of stuff that we pay attention to. At least in the last few decades, there's always scandals that pop up. And at the same time is that it really does matter for people's lives in terms of what happens. If you get a quote unquote a publication, that matters a lot. It means that you're a credible scientist. But at the same time, people have different definitions of what is an A publication and what's not. And the effects of, or the amount of work that it takes to get a true A, whatever that is, compared to a so-called A, by other people, whatever that actually is, it's huge. It's a big difference in the amount of work that is done. It's just like in grades, right? There's a big difference between getting an A plus, the amount of work that goes in, and getting a B. There's a very, very big difference in how much work that goes in between the two. So all of this goes to show is that there's just a tremendous amount of complexity with all of this. And it's generates, at least for me, a tremendous amount of skepticism. People that have been in the game for any reasonable amount of time become a little bit more skeptical. There's sort of two paths that you often take. One of them is you get good at playing the game, and people are aware that people get good at playing the game, or you get skilled at the publishing process, and people recognize that. There's all sorts of discussions about it, and it's very out in the open. But then on the flip side, if you talk to people that legitimately were probably more idealistic when they came in to the profession, they often have a lot of qualms. And they look at it and they say, what are we doing here? Um, I sort of fall on that side of things. I recognize I'm an engineer. I recognize practicality, and you have to be practical. You can't be sort of, idealistic and silly about things. But at the same time, I also recognize the value in good, valid research and how difficult it actually is to do that. And even, difficult at certifying what is good, valid research is often extraordinarily difficult in of itself of what that actually is. There's all sorts of nuance, and data is really finicky, and it's not as solid as most people think it is. So, my long story short is that the process, the whole scientific peer review process, at face value seems nice, but as you interact with it and you get to know how the sausage is made, that whole science, the whole the whole discussion about how the science sausage is made, you become a little bit more skeptical, a little bit more wise and astute, um, and then you recognize it for what it actually is, a very flawed, imperfect system. But if we knew of any other system, I would be happy to jump on it. I'm trying to change it with the reciprocity platform and create a system that is more algorithmic, but that also requires a lot of buy-in by a lot of players that are just not quite ready just yet. So that's it. Take care and have a wonderful day.